So recently in my YouTube recommendation feed, I was seeing two people going back and forth on Islam and Christianity. So I've seen one of the major points the Christian guy made regarding bestiality in Islam, and I don't agree with many of his points, and I will explain here why. So this is where it starts, I think. The mind of Jabura or Gabura tags Archidarchist and tells supports a pedophile defender in a server. He's in her server right as we speak, yada yada. The pedophile defender is MFT leader, and his prophet smashed cattle such as goats and camels. In this video we will be addressing the bestiality claims, as I don't really care about the pedophilic accusations. It's just based on definitions of what you classify pedophilia as, meaning it's just a semantic difference and I could care less about that. Regarding the morality stuff, he already subscribes to another morality which is different to mine, so if I debate with him on that, it would just be a debate on religions, which I don't really do. So we will just be talking about the bestiality thing here, which is a substantive difference as opposed to a semantic one. So the first scan he uses is of Dr. Zakir Naik, for which I have yet to find any credible source for. I have found it on atheist forums or on Hindu extremist tweets on Twitter, but none of them provide a source for the statement he's making, and I have found no video of him saying those words. This is just a questionable hearsay from polemical groups, and it is not a genetic fallacy per se of me saying that it lowers the credibility of the statement being true, since I'm seeing it in an inductive sense rather than outright denying the claim itself. As for Dr. Zakir Naik, even if he did say that, which he most probably didn't, even if he did, that statement holds no credibility because he is not a scholar in the first place. Even he himself says that he is a student of knowledge instead of saying he is a scholar. A student of knowledge is different than a scholar in Islam. A student of knowledge is the one who collects information from the scholars, and naturally, if there is no statement by the scholars which says this, then we can just outright deny Dr. Zakir Naik's claim.
Which I've said that earlier also, that I don't consider myself to be a scholar. I consider myself to be a talib-e-ilm, a student of knowledge.
And then he uses this article from an Islamic website which says that having an intercourse with an animal does not invalidate Hajj, and he uses this as evidence that having intercourse with an animal is encouraged and not impermissible, meaning it's permissible and all that. So this is false for a very big reason, right? The reasoning scholars give that intercourse with an animal does not invalidate Hajj is because, unlike adultery, it does not have a hadh punishment. A hadh punishment is something which is explicitly stated in the Quran and Hadith, while the other kind of punishment is a discretionary punishment, which is decided by the ruler of the land or the judge and whatnot. So they use this to prove that it is not the same as adultery, that is having intercourse with a vagina. So therefore it is not identical and should not have the identical effects, which is invalidating your Hajj in case of adultery with a female human, right? So since both of these are not identical, then it should follow that it should not invalidate the Hajj. Now, this does not mean that it is permissible under any means. If you read the article further down, it says that it is similar to sodomy, and sodomy does not invalidate Hajj as well. While it is known, I think even you do, that sodomy is a really big sin in Islam. So that does not count as an evidence to prove that intercourse with animals is permissible in Islam. Then he goes on to share this drawing, apparently from the 8th century, which I'm not going to show because it's just a disgusting ass drawing, and this video might also get deleted or reported for it. Anyway, there is literally no source for that image except on polemical websites. I wonder why that is. And even leaving that, right, you literally cannot show me a single source from history or from carbon dating which proves that painting to be from the 8th century. And even if it were, in which possible world does that indicate that it can be used as evidence? I see no world in which a painting counts as an evidence for a historical record. Just for your information, there are Roman depictions or drawings of humiliation of Jesus Christ. And I do not talk bad about prophets of other religions, even if they are of other religions. So I won't say or show those drawings, but you can go and check them up yourself. Now, does that count as a historical proof for you? Of course it wouldn't. And I'm not saying that paintings cannot be used at all for historical records, but in this scenario, there is no proof of this drawing even being real, and it also has a story which has no basis in history whatsoever, and it claims to be from the 8th century as well, for which there is no proof either. As for these scans, what I said earlier is sufficient, but if you have any doubts, you can ask me in the comment section. Now he shares this scan from Tahrir al-Wasila, which I don't have to respond to because I'm not a Shia, but there might be some Shias questioning the validity of this statement who are watching this video, and as I also like to search for the truth and not be inclined on falsehood, I will provide a response to this. The simple response is that it does not say that. It just does not even say that. And in fact, what it does say is that someone who has intercourse with an animal 4 times must be killed, the human. And then he copy-pastes this article from Answering Islam, I think, which says that Islamic societies, in quotations, are unhinged towards bestiality and it's a common practice. And it gives a reference below. If you check the reference, it says that Arabic tribes are engaged in bestiality. Arabic tribes do not necessarily mean Islam or Islamic tribes, since Arabic tribes are mostly ignorant when it comes to Islam. Do you think tribal people of the Arabian Peninsula are aware of the sciences of Islamic legislation and law? That's akin to me saying that the people from the dark ages of Christianity in villages have proper knowledge of Christianity and Christian legislations and Christian philosophy. I could care less about this next fatwa because it's from a Shia, but that is not the opinion of almost any Shiite scholar, since we've seen before from Ruhollah Khomeini from the previous book I mentioned, which says that the person who has intercourse with an animal must be killed. So he's opposed by many of his peers in that regard. And if any educated Shia thinks this is false, and by this I mean the fatwa he quoted, you can inform me in the comment section and I'll be sure to note that down. Now about the first passage, I don't know where he got that from, because if you ask any Arabian Muslim about that saying, he would say that he does not know of it and he has never heard that in his life. What I can theorize is that there was also pilgrimage to Mecca in pre-Islamic Arabia, and they used to go there in the month of pilgrimage. Pagans used to go to Mecca for a pilgrimage as well, so it could be their saying. As for this fatwa, I've already talked about this when I gave the analogy of sodomy and about why there is no prescribed punishment for it. I explained that as well. the difference between the two types of punishment in Islam. If you have any questions about it, again, you can ask me in the comment section. Now he asks, if bestiality is actually impermissible, then why is there no prescribed punishment for it? Well, there can be many answers, but first of all, I'd say that some scholars do believe that there is a had for it. It is a scholarly difference. The reason the other scholars don't believe that is because they think the other hadiths which talk about the punishment aren't authentic, so they give a discretionary punishment. And the discretionary punishment is always to be done in the case of bestiality. Now he quotes someone with a PhD, Judith Worrell. I don't see how that has to do with anything here. If she's talking about Islam, that's just an appeal to false authority, and she's not credible at all in this field. And if she did use evidence, you can cite it. Here the person who wrote the article is presupposing that there is no evidence or ruling based on it, while that is false. We have the ijma' of scholars that bestiality is haram, along with many other hadiths which state the same. What you're doing is you're arguing from silence. I can also say, for example, that since Christians are not under the Mosaic law and there is no mention of bestiality in the New Testament, that bestiality is now allowed in Christianity. As you can see, that is not how that works. We take the opinions and words of scholars and general common sense into consideration as well in law. I've already talked about why this fatwa doesn't matter, but I will be addressing his paraphrasing of this fatwa from his limited understanding here. So he basically says in his paraphrasing that this statement allows you to have sex with animals and you just have to do this in return. But as we've addressed before, it just says what to do in case you have done it. That does not mean that it is permissible in the first case. Just like how if you commit adultery, you still have to purify yourself. But that doesn't mean that adultery itself is allowed. With this, we've countered all of his fatwas or his sources which he used from the scholars, and his last sentence is just straight up wrong, that if it was actually impermissible, there would be no reason or excuses or conditions for it, which is just blatantly false. There is no plausible reason as to why there wouldn't be any conditions if you committed a sin. Now, about the first point, I've already rebutted this many times. Just because he says what to do after an action does not mean that the action itself is permissible. Now, where he rhetorically asks, is this the morality that Muslims are talking about? Yes, this is indeed the morality which Muslims are talking about. This is the morality where you don't have to go and publicly announce that I committed homosexuality, or I committed adultery, or I committed zina, or I committed bestiality. But this is indeed where you go and ask God for forgiveness in private instead of announcing or boasting about your sin in public. This is indeed the morality of an omnibenevolent being. Well, regarding this next verse, I cannot be inclined to answer all of these individually, so I'll just give you a brief answer, right? So what this verse just says is that he made mates for you from among yourselves, meaning that he made mates of humans from humans, which is true. There is no contradiction in saying that humans produce humans which are also mates of humans. That is, that humans produce their own mates because humans reproduce humans and humans mate with humans. That does not mean, however, that males can mate with males or likewise for females. It just means that humans produce their own mates, nothing else. It's called a synecdoche in English. Or you can just say that it is a general verse and should not be taken specifically. Now regarding the conjunction is put in there because it is a different part of the verse. He says, and from the cattle spouses whereby he multiplies you, meaning that he makes spouses of cattles from cattles. That is why there is a conjunction put in there and spouses are mentioned again. Had it been that the cattles were also spouses for human beings, there would be no need to mention spouses again. The interpretation of the second latter part of the verse is that from the cattle spouses there should be a separation between cattle and spouses. There are two different words. Cattle, spouses. He made from the cattle spouses for the cattles, not for humans, whereby he multiplies you. Now here, this is the part of importance. The word used for where he multiplies you is يَضْرَأُكُمْ, where the kum means you, and the you here refers to both cattle and humans, which makes sense due to the context because, as previously stated, he made a difference between humans and animals where he separated them and mentioned different cases for both. Now, the you here is a separator for God and the living beings, where you refers to the living beings in general, such as the cattle he mentioned, cattle and humans he mentioned. Now he imposes a challenge, that is, in simple words, by using the Quran alone can Muslims show that Allah abhors bestial acts. Why would I? If Muslims use multiple forms of evidences such as the Quran, the Hadith, the Sunnah, and the Ijma' of the scholars and even scholarly opinions, why should I just use the Quran alone? What you are doing is, you are posing an arbitrary restriction just to fulfill your needs. That is plainly fallacious and cherry-picking. And now he finally makes this claim that when the Quran says, those whom your right hand possesses, it means everything within your ownership or authority. But that is not the case. Islamically, those whom your right hand possesses means the female captives or the captives you have taken in war. And I will cite the following hadith, which further proves my point because it explains that the female captives are the ones being mentioned in the verses where it states those whom your right hand possesses. Now he cites the following verse to make his evidence or proof, which I don't think or I don't see how that helps him because it just talks about the desires of men. It does not talk about what their right hand possesses specifically. It only talks about the desires and what they can possess, which is different from what their right hand possesses, especially due to the hadith I cited, which further establishes my stance. And here he cites these verses saying that they refer to the those whom your right hand possesses term, including more than just the female captives. That's just a blatant lie. They all refer to female captives in all of these verses. Now where he cites Ibn Qudama on this, where he says there is no difference between intercourse in the anus or vagina with a human being or an animal, that means that the legal rulings of this is the same on whether it invalidates the Hajj or not. It does not mean that both of them are same in the case of Sharia or legality, but only in the case of whether it invalidates your Hajj or not. If you see below, it also says there is a difference of opinion, which further enhances my point that it only talks about whether it invalidates your Hajj or not, the similarity in that case, and not the similarity in the case that whether it is legal or haram or halal. Now regarding your points here, you said this is an Islamic site that cites hadiths and Quranic verses. While that is true, what he quoted were scholarly opinions and not hadiths and Quran directly. Now you said the hadith literally said that sex with animals and human isn't different.
That's again a scholarly work, and I've told you what it was specifically talking about. You just merely did a context to me and left the context out of the window. Now, you are saying that Allah didn't know that a mule is the offspring of a male donkey and a female horse. That is not right. I don't know how you got that. The verse is made to be interpreted in an occasionalistic sense, which you should not disagree with, probably, which you do not disagree with, since most of your scholars affirm occasionalism and divine simplicity. To explain simply, it just means that Allah creates everything. If Allah said, for example, hypothetically, that He creates humans and their sons, that does not mean that the sons are of a different species. It just means that Allah is responsible for the creation of both of them, and that He is responsible for everything which occurs in this universe or in reality as a whole. Now, regarding this, he posted two articles of Muslims apparently marrying goats, right? Now, I don't see how this can be used as a form of evidence. I don't see. It's literally unfathomable how what a person does proves that Islam allows it or is in support of it. Even in the article, it says that the marriage was against Sharia law. The part where it says that it was done in an Islamic way is probably a mistyping or an error, because just after that it says that it goes against Sharia, and Sharia is Islamic law. So that does not make sense unless the person who wrote the article committed an error. And I can say the same for this article. What Muslims do does not represent Islam. I do not take the opinions of elders from a random village unless they cite some form of good evidence. I wouldn't even consider it. Now you claim that this hadith which forbids bestiality is not reliable because the very next hadith states that there is no punishment for bestiality, which we've already discussed about the tazir punishment. But why did you leave out this part from the same hadith you quoted? This is the hadith which is after it, which he claims to be a contradiction and which is more reliable according to him. So why did you leave out the commentary bit of this hadith? It seems like to me that you are only quoting things which would further support your point and leaving out the other things which can go against your point. As for the grading of the two hadiths, and where Abu Dawood said that the latter hadith was more reliable, that has been overruled by scholars other than him because of corroborative evidence, and scholars such as Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah has said that the previous hadith which talks about the killing of the person who commits bestiality is really authentic based on corroborative and other types of evidences. So we take their opinion over Abu Dawood because of the discovery of new evidences. Now you cite Imam Nawawi's commentary on this hadith, and in no translation does it translate to the home animal. I've seen that you are a fan of literal translations from previous instances, so why not use the literal translation here?
It is further clear that he is talking about a human and not an animal if you look at the interpretations he's talking about below.
And regarding this, I've already said time and time again, just because an action has conditions onto it, if you do it, doesn't mean the action itself is permissible, but it exists because sometimes sins do happen and you have to have a ruling in case you do a sin. Now, where it talks about the severed penis, it probably refers to the injuries a man could suffer in war. That was all recording the bestiality statements, and as for this, right, what he meant is that they aren't authentically attributed to the Prophet, rather than hadiths not being authentic themselves. And in regards to Aisha radiallahu anha, I will be uploading a video on that as well, but not anytime soon, since I have exams and stuff. So probably in like a month or two, inshallah. Peace be upon you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.